Welcome! I'm so excited that you're here, and I'm so excited to get started with you guys today. You are at the beginning of Module 1. This is Lesson 1, and this is going to be a brief introduction to what we're going to talk about in Module 1. As we talked about in the introduction videos, you need a plan for your business. And one of the most important parts of the plan is your foundation. You have to build a house on a strong foundation, and you have to build your business on a strong foundation as well. So the question becomes, well, what is a strong foundation? And I'm excited to talk to you about that today. We're going to dive in, and I'm going to give you a high-level overview of some of the components that go into creating a strong foundation for your business. So let's get started on that right now. So here's a problem that I see with a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of small businesses today. Somebody decides they want to start a business and they start trying to make the business separate from them. So in branding, and we'll talk a lot more about branding in depth later on, but in branding, you pick characteristics for your business, almost like you would pick the characteristics of a personality. In small business ownership, it's almost impossible to build a business with characteristics that you don't personally already have. It's going to be really hard to create a compelling brand that adds connection and value for your customers if you don't build your business and your brand on characteristics that you already have intrinsically. So we're going to start with who you are. And in Module 1, we're going to talk about who you are before we'll move on to Module 2 and talk about what kind of business you're going to build. Here's why building a business on something that you're not is a bad idea. Let me ask you to think for a second. Have you ever been in a situation where you felt like you had to put on an act? Maybe you were at a fancy dinner and you are not a fancy person. Or maybe you found yourself in a very casual setting with people making jokes about something that made you feel a little bit uncomfortable, but you just had to roll with it because you knew that that's what the setting required. Well, it's hard, right? It's exhausting to try to be something and try to be someone that you're not. Those situations are discouraging. Now imagine trying to build a business based on something that you're not. You'll be just as discouraged, and you will more quickly be burnt out if you build your business on characteristics that you're not. So the question that we're going to focus on today is, what are the elements that make up who you are as a person? And by finding those and focusing on those, we will ensure that your business is built on a strong foundation. How do I know this is the case? Well, I've been there. My first business, as I mentioned in some of the previous videos, I started at a pretty young age. And I was working with a clientele and a customer base that was very different than I was. But I realized that I needed to conform a little bit to their needs and their desires. My first company didn't have a very clear mission statement. And we really weren't sure, towards the end of the life of the company, we really weren't sure exactly what we were about. And one of my vice presidents came to me one day and said, "Whitney, what's the true north of our company?" And I said, "Well, to make money." And she said, "That's not a true north. That's not a mission." And I thought long and hard about what she said, and I realized that she was right, that we didn't have a mission that was clear and compelling, that was driving our employees and connecting to our customers. So I realized it was time to change that, and I had to go back to the drawing board. Here's the bottom line. Money is not a motivator, and profit is not a purpose. Yes, we're all in small business ownership to make money, but at the end of the day, money will only motivate so far, and profit is never a purpose that's going to connect with your customers. Your customers don't care how much money you make. They want you to help them solve a problem. So how do we get to your purpose as a company? That's what we're going to discover right now. So here's a question for you. Have you ever thought about what your values have to do with your business? Have you ever stopped to wonder if your business reflects your values and your personality? Or have you always assumed that you and your business are separate? I'm here to tell you that it's impossible to build a business in today's connected world that does not incorporate your values. Who you are is going to shine through in what you do, whether you like it or not. Wouldn't you rather put a little bit of strategy behind it to get some results that you want? Brands that recognize the overlap between personal and business values are the most successful brands. In fact, these businesses are the businesses that use the owner's core values in the business itself and leverage the power of those values and that personality to make the business even more successful. This is a much more holistic approach to business. So while it takes some work to discover these things about yourself, in hindsight, it will help you build a much more sustainable business. We're going to engage in a process together to uncover what the most important aspects of you are going to be and how to incorporate those into your business. An important part of this process is understanding the 5 main elements that make up your business's foundation. Everyone's principles are going to be a little bit different, but we can start to unpack our principles by talking about each of these 5 words. Simply by discovering what your principles and values are and looking to align your business with your principles and values, your business will begin to exude an integrity that any business would want to have. This not only gives your business a strong foundation, but it also makes you a happier business owner. Are you ready to learn about the 5 elements of a strong business foundation? Let's dive in. The first word is picture. I'll talk a lot about picture in the next video, but the basic idea of picture is this. What's the world that you imagine? My friend Jeff Goins calls this your worldview. What's the world that you see? And how do you communicate that? The second word that describes the next element is powers. Powers is another word for your strengths, your skills, your knowledge base, your talents, etc. Discovering your powers will help you understand what kind of business you should be in. Powers are one of your greatest untapped assets. The third word is passions. Now, what I'm about to tell you might sound a little bit counterintuitive, but I would actually caution you against following your passions. I would encourage you to determine what your powers and your assets are and follow those, not your passions. Following your powers and strengths can position you as an expert, but following your passions can sometimes make you look silly. We learn our passions not so we can follow them, but so that we can better understand our points of burnout and so that we know how to refuel ourselves. The best thing to do with your passions is preserve and honor them and use them as a tool to re-energize yourself whenever you start to feel burnout. The fourth word that I want us to talk about is principles. Now, we cannot operate apart from our principles. We can't believe one thing and do another. Or we can, but our audience will always smell that disconnect and they'll see us as inauthentic and they'll start to lose trust in us. So principles are non-negotiable. We can always respect people with different principles, but we have to honor our own. The fifth and final word that's an element of your foundation is the word purpose. For a lot of people, figuring out your life purpose is a long, elusive journey, but I really want to simplify this for people. Your purpose is not a complicated thing. Simply by taking the elements of your personality and doing the most that you can with what you have, and by practicing your powers and your passions and your principles, you're living out your purpose. And that's a brief introduction to the 5 core elements that build a strong foundation for your business. We'll talk more in depth about the next one in the next video, so I'll see you there.